Everybody, welcome to Bite Me right here on the DJB Productions Network. Make sure you hit that notification bell down below. Hit the subscribe button, of course. Leave us some comments down below. Share the video, and as always, go through all the different playlists. Find something you like, watch it, share it. We always appreciate the support. Love being on the show. This show is one of our favorites. It's an old-time favorite. We're bringing it back on the network. And joining me, of course, is my good friend, Chris Gordon.
Hey, what's going on? What's
Chris
happening?
Gordon right there. And, of course, the lovely and odd Stacy Rubel. Look at her right there. How lovely. Hey, guys, this is such a great show. We had such a great time doing the show before. We're doing it again. Just a special shout out to our old teammate, Lily Hernandez, who can no longer be on the shows based on her scientific affiliation. She is now Mr. Wizard. For those of you who are Gen X, that's what I've been affectionately calling her, as Mr. Wizard. She's done very well. Lily, we love you to death. This show is actually dedicated to you because I actually was going to be producing the show with you in mind. And you told me, well, Dan, I love that, but I can't be on. So that was the end of that. But once again, hats off to Lily, who is a phenomenal person in the science field and a great friend as well to boot. We have a great, interesting show today. For those of you out there, you sci-fi nerds out there, there was a show back in the day with Scott Bakula, and it was called Quantum Leap. This is where Dr. Sam Beckett jumps from person to person back through time, and he writes things that are wrong in their life. And then once that is done, he jumps to a new person. All right. There was a revival of the show, not a remake, but a continuation that started just a couple years ago. It's on NBC, and it stars now a new doctor, Dr. Ben Song, who is going into the accelerator. He's doing the quantum leap as well. It's a completely different format of the show, but it is a continuation with a lot of throwbacks to the original series, including Sam Beckett and Al and Ziggy and everything like that. And it's just a great show. Stacy had no idea it even existed because Stacy doesn't exist on television in time. I don't know why. Makes me feel a certain way about her. But but like, definitely got to check it out. This is not a show to promote that, but like, what I thought would be a great thing behind it, and this is why I dedicate this to Lily Hernandez, is that the theory behind Quantum Leap. These guys are jumping from person to person, correcting rights that were wrong. My thing was, who the fuck are these people that I need to change this person from, like, saying robbing a bank and going to jail, and not robbing a bank and getting a job. Like, what did he do to save America, to save the world, to save the universe? You know, like, I don't understand what is going on. But we're going to talk about the theories behind, if this was real, like, what would it be? Chris, I know loves going down rabbit holes. That's why I love having him on I love having him on these shows. And Stacy is just so animated and is just like, yeah, I think it really can happen. So we're going to just go around. We're going to talk about our things. I will start with Stacy first, because Stacy is a huge Quantum Leap fan, much as I am as well, even though she didn't know the new one was out.
I didn't. I'm ashamed.
You know,
I really
you should be. You really should be. You know.
Should be.
You should be. But Quantum Leap, like, think about that for a second. The ability to jump into somebody and be them. And then you're responsible for making something right that's wrong. But who's to say this is right versus wrong. I mean, aside from like, yeah, don't rob a bank. I understand that, but like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, think about that for a second.
I feel like it's almost like a. So this is where Ziggy comes into play because Ziggy gives us all of our information we need to know about what to do. But it's actually similar to things going on now, surprisingly. So
Mhm.
first of all, I found out actually earlier today when I was just looking up the show and stuff that apparently we're able to control the actual quantum leaping that we've observed in science. So that's cool. But secondly, AI is getting insane, which is kind of what Ziggy was. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some sort of special, and I think it's entirely possible, some sort of like algorithmic creation to, calculate like the domino effect, like preventing this guy from robbing a bank and getting a job. Because he got this job, he gave this one guy a loan who was then able to help this one guy,
Oh, okay.
boss who then promoted them. Then he became a CEO of a company that found out the cure for cancer, kind of thing. So I think
Right.
it'd be like super indirect.
Yeah.
So I think that we don't know because we're not built to understand algorithms and stuff. But I think that like an advanced AI or something like Ziggy would make sense for them to know something like that. So I wouldn't say it's like we would know if it's right or wrong, but if it would ultimately benefit society in the end by some domino effect.
Right. Almost like butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
sense.
it's like the butterfly effect, except for
Mhm.
you have an algorithm and you kind of know how it's going to play out instead of being chaotic. Like the butterfly flaps its wings, but somehow it
Mhm.
caused this thing. But it's more like, like the events, like the dominoes. But yeah, it's similar to the butterfly effect, except for the events that would transpire from you making this one choice and cause
Right.
this huge domino effect that could just, take years from now to even pop up.
Right.
Which was the premise for Minority Report.
Yes,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very true.
so it
Mhm.
completely ties in because that's exactly what you would do. You would say,
Mhm.
okay, well, we know that this individual is going to be the next Hitler. We need to end this.
Hmm.
And then they employ this technology. So, and to the question of whether it's right or wrong, as AI advances and this stuff that's happening the way it is now, I, that's always going to be a gray area.
Yeah.
It really will, because like what you were saying about like the Hitler thing, like that is something that comes up in philosophy discussions all the time. Like if you could go back in time
Hmm.
and kill Hitler as a child, would you do it? Would that make you wrong? Because it's like the Minority Report where you technically still have free will. They
Mhm.
still have to actively make that choice, which was the flaw in the Minority Report, was they found out that there could be that glimpse of free will that prevents them from actually taking that action. Those cognitives were saying.
Right.
It's interesting you bring that up, and here comes the fucking first rabbit hole.
Yeah, I love rabbit holes. Let's do it.
So they had that. There was a big discussion about that. What would have happened because there were attempts on Hitler's life. One was a very close call, actually, when they blew up the bunker. No, it wasn't the bunker. It was one somewhere where he was doing his
Hmm.
ridiculousness. The way it played out was that had he been assassinated, the Nazis might have won because the
Interesting.
second in command, the way they looked at his strategic and just how bloodthirsty this guy was, and the other thing is he didn't have syphilis like Hitler did. So, his brain was being eaten from the inside out. That's why he was getting nuts. He already was, but going beyond nuts. The second in command may have changed tactics and changed the course of history. So it's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of scary
Yeah.
when you think about like if you're like, oh, we're going to do this to change history. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
That's
it's
what I'm
going
saying.
to
Like
do.
with the human, it's flawed, and with Ziggy, it's almost like that AI thing where they can
Yeah.
read things the way humans can't. Only computers can, to kind of determine, like what you said, like this could have led to this outcome in
Right.
World War II kind of thing. But as far as like a right or wrong thing, because I think
I mean, I think you have to
something I don't.
rely. I
It's
think you have to
hard to
rely on the
say.
AI.
You
think
do.
you really do
You can't
because
really. You can do what like feels right to you, but what feels right to you right now may not be what's going to benefit everybody way down the road.
There was a show on Spike TV, if you guys remember Spike TV. And
Is that not a
was,
thing anymore? I've
no,
had cable
Spike
in
TV
years.
is, I think Spike TV is Paramount.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Oh, that's
Paramount now.
crazy.
Yeah,
I did
yeah,
not
yeah.
know that. I'm on else stuff today. Sorry.
But you don't know nothing. It's crazy. I don't know why you even
I know.
No, but
I'm
they did it. There was a show called something Warrior. I forget what the show was called. And Chris, you might remember it. It was a show where they would say, we're going to take the ninja and we're going to have him verse a gunslinger. Like two totally like.
Oh,
and then,
oh, it's
and
not
then-
Forged in Fire. It was
it was
shoot,
something
Dave
Warrior.
was-
Something
I'm
Warriors.
tapping the husband.
Yeah.
Dave, what was
Yeah.
that show with the Warriors where they
And-
would like compare two different fighting styles? Ultimate Warrior?
Oh
No,
no, but you're
that's
close.
not it, guys.
I know what it is. I'm just trying to remember.
Something Warrior. It was something like Warrior.
Deadliest
and-
Warrior. Deadliest
Deadliest
Warrior.
Warrior. There,
Sorry,
thank you.
it just
Thank
came
you.
to me. I was like,
Thank you. Deadliest Warrior.
I was gonna
And what
look it
they
up
did
on
was
camera.
they, in a sense, used an AI. They used a computer algorithm, and they ran simulations. And
Oh,
these
yeah, I know. I
simulations
remember
ran
this.
like thousands of times, and they're like, all right, 86% of the time, the ninja would beat the thing because of blah 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 blah. And it had all this data, and
Right.
and it gave you what the weak points and the strong points were, and why this would work out this way because of, regardless of how many times they won or that one, the Cowboys' Achilles heel is blah 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 blah, and therefore each time the ninja was able to capitalize on it, blah blah blah, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Right.
So like you have a scenario where it's like there is no thought process behind it, there is no emotion behind it, there is no
Sorry.
no, you're good. There is no like you said, like no how you say second thoughts behind it. Is this right? Is this wrong? No moral encapsulation. So
Well,
you're dealing.
yeah, it's,
You need
it's like I guess it's the way justice is supposed to be without what is it without pride or without prejudice, something like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
It's just is. And I mean, they do that
This
now.
is blind.
They're doing those simulations now with wildlife. They're like, who would beat a bear or a gorilla? Like who would win? And they do these
Yeah.
simulations on all of the aspects of that animal. But they are now getting so advanced that they're getting into the behavioral behavior of those animals, and the algorithm plays it out.
Mhm.
Where
Yes.
they sometimes don't even finish the battle because the algorithm actually reads that
Mhm.
one would not, they have to reassess it and say, no, they have to finish somehow. Like,
Right.
it's really getting pretty advanced.
Now,
Oh,
if
it
we
is. Like if you've seen, because Dave, my husband, is super into AI, so he's like on top of it all the time, and he was like a part of like the betas for like the Bing AI, and he uses ChatGPT a lot. I use ChatGPT to, I mean, may or may not have written a D&D character with it, but anyway, I digress. That is just basic stuff. Like the things that we are doing with AI right now
Mhm.
are insane. Like you were talking about the Deadliest Warrior.
yes.
Think about that to like a millionth degree now, just because AI ends up programming AI, so it's like exponentially moving up to the
Mhm.
point where they've actually there was I can't remember if it was a kid or guy, but there was a person who had a disease and went to the doctor multiple times, multiple doctors over the last several years. They couldn't diagnose them, they couldn't figure it out. AI did it in 20 minutes.
Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, there's
it's
so
been
many.
crazy.
There's so many positives that you could sell it, right?
Oh, there it is.
But the cons are so drastic in the sense of like everybody's biggest fear of AI is it taking over, deeming humans incapable of making rational thought as they can, so therefore they are expendable. And it goes to Days of Futures Past type of scenario. We have Sentinels, and we're now getting destroyed and stuff like that, right? And all somebody wanted to do was write a program that they would jump into, say, Chris Gordon, and they would make him like Florida Georgia Line instead of hating them. Like
that's
like,
that's a
what-
stretch.
they-
A lot of
I have
people,
no
are
idea
really.
how- Holy shit.
A lot of people are very frightened about the advancement of AI.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, yeah, it can be used for bad, but people think about losing their jobs and stuff as a negative. But here's the thing.
Mhm.
AI will be able to take over every single job in the world. So if you don't have to work and I don't have to work and so down the street doesn't have to work, there has to be some sort of universal basic income or support. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how that'd work out, but you can't just have 9 billion people on the planet Earth unemployed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm like, this is the way I see it, is if it takes over all the jobs and it takes over all the crappy labor that we don't want to do, it leaves room for us to, first of all, not be nearly as stressed as we are, because we're not supposed to experience the amount of stress and shit that we do right now. But I think it can help alleviate a lot of that. Now, there are,
Right.
of course, downsides and stuff. Like there's like the problem with the arts. You know,
Yes.
there's people writing AI scripts, and a lot of people are worried about that. And here's my thought process on it: is people, it's sort of like now, like you can manufacture a plate, right? Easy, some generic fucking factory out in the
Yeah.
Midwest, you know. But if somebody is creating that in a kiln and they're painting every little detail on it and shit like that, you're going to pay a lot more for that, and you're still going to want that hand piece of plate, like that, or that handmade plate.
Right.
So that's what I think about the arts, is people are still going to want genuine art just because that's just the nature of humans.
Well, that's the thing. And AI is going to be so
And that's the
stale, so
problem.
cold, so
Yeah.
cold. Yeah.
Mhm.
If those who watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, Data, who's probably one of the most favorite characters on that show,
Okay,
right?
he even had a program that helped him learn humor. I love that episode, by the way. Anyway,
but
continue.
but he is like, he does the arts, he does violin, he does music and stuff like that. But the problem is, and
There's
everybody
no
will tell him,
passion, yeah.
you're too perfect. There's no nuance to show that you're a human, and that's what people look for in the
Well,
music.
yeah, I think that that's always
Mhm.
going to happen. I mean, there's anytime
Yeah.
something rises, there's always a subculture under it. I mean, as a musician, and being as old as I am, and I'm fucking old, I've seen it 3 times in my life. That's 3 generations.
Are you going to say vinyls? Because those have made a
No,
huge
well, I
fucking
mean,
comeback.
that's-
Yeah,
that-
they did.
That's
Yeah,
a
they did.
delivery form. That's a form
Yeah,
of
that's
music.
true.
Yeah.
And that was tied to a specific listening habit that we grew up with. In other words,
Yeah.
when we were listening to music, music was never background. It was never wallpaper. We
Right.
never thought of it because, first of all, we didn't have the delivery system for it to be so. So when I was growing up in the 70s, it was I'm going to go listen to music right now. And it was an
That's
active,
it.
interactive experience
Mhm.
where I became completely enveloped in that moment. And I think I spent 5 years not even looking at a television because I had the stereo with the record collection, all that bullshit.
Sure.
And then you know, when the cassettes really started to happen, and you know, you had, you know, I started driving. Well, you know, got to have tunes.
Yeah.
And I wasn't oddly enough, I ended up on radio, but I didn't listen to terrestrial radio. So, you know, I'm listening, you know, doing my thing. But yeah, so the delivery system got different. And then when it all happened in here, even, you know, I mean, and by the time I was a kid, jazz music was already wallpaper. People, you know, it was a lounge act. It was like, oh, you know, Misty,
Yeah.
right? Rock music has now become that. Rock music is now wallpaper.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wallpaper.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, that's evolution. That's just the way it works, and things of that nature. However, the technology of it is that, and you see it all the time now on YouTube and all these things. You see all this picture perfect, even execution on the instrument.
Yeah.
And not long after this stuff, the first wave hit, which was massive wave,
Mhm.
all of a sudden there was the counterpoints going, I feel nothing when I listen to that. Not me. I'm not speaking for me. I'm speaking for a lot of the students that I spoke to. They're like, I feel nothing when I listen to this. And then you start to hear the other bands that are coming up that are really raw. And that happened before. That happened when the punk movement started in the very late 70s, early 80s. You know, because you had the arena rock, you had the Bostons and the Journeys, you know, and then the Sex Pistols came out and said, you know. And then it happened again in the 90s when the grunge movement hit. So it's always back and forth. But with AI, it's changing the way we experience all sorts of entertainment. And a lot of the entertainment we see, or sometimes the things we see on these very screens that we're looking into right now, aren't real.
Right.
It's all AI.
Some of that stuff's gotten insane. I used to be able to pick at, I'm talking about a year ago, like a year ago. All right. I used to be able to pick out AI like that. Be like, oh, yeah,
Right.
you know, because they have like 6 fingers and, you know,
Right,
and
right.
spelling's wrong and stuff. But it just in the last year, and I'm talking about public stuff. I don't even know the shit going on in the government and the high end stuff. I'm just talking about stuff we have access to, has gotten insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, it started with the deep fakes. And
Mhm.
these deep fakes now, I mean, I tell people all the time, just know your whereabouts and always have an alibi. Because, you like all of a sudden you find yourself on TV, somebody deep faked you somewhere else, it's scary. And
Hey,
that
but that could
goes
be
back.
a great defense because if they don't have any DNA evidence, if you commit a crime, you can be like, bro, it was AI. It
Yeah,
wasn't me.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
it's funny. Like we're
First defense.
content creators here on YouTube, and I watch a lot of YouTube shows and stuff like that, and a lot of narrated shows. Like especially if you watch stuff like say on Ring cams, like if you watch those
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
cam
the
videos
Ring
stuff like
cam.
that, the narrator sounds like Chris, right? It's got a nice voice, blah blah blah. But then, like if he has to say Beverly Hills 90210.
It's
He'll say
Beverly 90210. Yeah, it's like a weird.
no.
way
He'll
they
say
it, yeah.
Beverly Hills 92010, and you're like, what the fuck is this guy said? What? Right? And then they'll say something else like very like, oh my god, you're reading it phonetically, and I'm like, this is an AI. Like holy shit,
Mhm.
And I would have never thought,
Dave just had that experience recently. Mr. AI himself, all
Mhm.
right, was listening to a video and watching stuff, and he straight up thought it was a person. And then
Wow.
until he realized it was AI, and he's like, I couldn't even tell. And I think he was more shocked because it was like a TikTok video. It wasn't like one of his
Sure.
like beta shits,
Right.
And he was like, yeah, it was the guy talking. You said that was.
But now,
Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't a TikTok. It was a YouTube series, everyone.
there we go. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, David. Sorry, David.
We're all sorry. We apologize.
Good morning, Dave.
Forgiven, 'cause he brought me
The
a
ultimate,
fat
the
lizard,
ultimate, yeah,
so.
the ultimate AI. Good morning, Dave.
Yeah, right.
But like, but getting back into the quantum leap. Now you're talking about first of all, people are making decisions, like you said, and let's go with the butterfly effect because I think that is the one thing that almost covers a plot hole that I find in Quantum Leap, the television series, that like, who the fuck are these people that I need to change their life? Like they're not changing world leaders. They're not changing world leaders. They're changing like Susie Jane from getting pregnant with her second kid.
Yeah, that's
marrying this guy. Like, all right, whatever.
See, that's the producers. That's the writers.
You know what I mean? Like,
they got to keep it a series, and they got to make it relatable to people who are going to tune in and watch that. I mean, if it was like every episode was a world leader, then it'd be like, okay, that's a season, maybe.
Plus, technically, that butterfly effect, like the domino effect thing, opens it up so they can write whatever the hell.
I mean, I truly like the idea that someone's in a government facility that's like off the books, but costs trillions of dollars, and their one goal this week is to make Chris Gordon like Florida Georgia Line. I think like that's like wow, this is the decision we're making. But all jokes aside, though, if we had this type of technology, now you could imagine one country or one world leader or however you want to say it wouldn't be able to be in charge of this because there's no way that like the US could have this technology and Russia, China, Japan, everybody else is like, oh, what the fuck? We have to have that too. You know what I mean? And who says you can govern this? Who says you can go in and do that? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. So you're talking about something that would have to be worldwide. Imagine like there's two sides to it. There's like the collaboration of the entire world, which when is that ever going to happen? Right. And then
I
the
swear to
morality
God,
behind
that's
stuff.
happening right now, and it's just a ruse.
But the morality behind it of saying like, all right, we need to go back there and now let's talk about the people for a second. All right. Let's say and I love because I'm picking on Chris a lot, but like, let's say like Stacy, for some reason, like we need to go back and change the fact that she didn't see Quantum Leap, the new season, right? We need to change that for some reason, right? But why? Like, what rights does Stacy have to say, hey, maybe I don't want to watch that season? Why are you kind of making me do that? Now, granted, you could sit there and say this is a bad decision, but a bad decision is only in the eye of the beholder, is it not?
Mhm. It
It's
is. That was
perception.
that was always my other thing with Quantum Leap is it has the domino effect, but then this person is not making their own choices. It's not by their own will that these things are happening,
Right.
which I actually think comes into like kind of like a morally meh kind of area.
Mhm.
Like, 'cause it might benefit society, but then what are you saying about people's free will and human rights then?
Right.
Like, at
It's
that
exactly
point,
right. You're violating it to the highest degree.
to the you cannot
Yeah.
violate somebody's rights more than taking over their soul and their body and their mind.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and then
my
making them
point.
do whatever. So like it might better the world, but then you're looking at like
Now, to
is
give
it
you a
still
kind of a
morally
cool
okay though?
Now, to give you a kind of a cool thing, this is kind of a neat thing. In the original series, now it was never really shown. I think it might have been shown in maybe one episode or something like that. But what happened was when Sam Beckett would jump into a person,
Mhm.
that person would flip and would be back at HQ, I think, in like a green room. If I remember correctly, like it wasn't really
can't
discussed too
remember.
much, but it wasn't like like a conscious was dormant or something like that. They traded places in a
Well, that
sense.
would make sense because that would be the literal definition of quantum leap. You're trading
Right.
places with one indiscrete energy with like another like
So it
molecule
was
and stuff.
almost like like being abducted by aliens. You have very vague memories of what's happening, but you knew something happened. I was in this room and there was these people in white coats and blah blah blah, but I can't really remember stuff. And that's kind of like the way they kind of dressed it, right? In the new version of Quantum Leap, there's nobody coming back to HQ. That person is dormant. And only in the second season of the last episode of the second season do you actually see after Dr. Ben Son leaps.
I was gonna say every fucking episode of Quantum Leap, I always wanted to
Right.
be like because they always are like so confused when they come back. They're like kind of
Well, he comes back. He's like, the guy was
why
like,
the fuck am I in this baseball uniform?
like- as Ben, right? He's hugging this person, and then he leaps while he's hugging the person,
exactly,
and the person's like, who are you? What am I doing here? What happened to me? Like he knew, like it was like a lapse in time. Like Chris was saying, it was like an unconscious like blackout in a sense. So there's so many.
But a blackout,
rules.
you don't have any. It's not a. See, I'm beginning to think that maybe the show can be seen as something completely bigger than it is.
Mhm.
In other words, it's not just leaping. It's in other words, if you were to take a higher bird's eye view of what Quantum Leap, maybe the show is really about, is that it's
Right.
always been. It's
Yeah.
always been happening from the dawn of time. That the presence of the human species, quantum physics and quantum leaping had been constantly going on. Multiple dimensions, multiple universes. There are multiple. That's on the assumption that there are multiple versions of us.
But even if there's
all
not, what
living.
you say makes
But now you're
sense.
talking deja vu and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but not even that. But like, I think that is definitely a concept right there. In fact, it makes more sense that it's just been ongoing because you have the humans in the future, so you can meddle as far back into the past as you want
Mhm.
if you have that technology. So,
Right.
in essence, it has been just going on in a loop for eternity, like
Right. Constantly
all the
going
time,
from
yeah.
maybe one area to the other. And I mean, when was it? What they quantum leaps? I mean, Einstein was debating it, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about a century ago, right? I mean, it's not new.
No,
But
I mean,
it's
like,
not. And now we can apparently control quantum leaps and not in the show sense, but in the sense of like molecules.
Yeah,
But
they have that.
it's
They
to me
have
right
that.
now too.
Where's that thing? That superconductor they have.
Oh, are you talking about like the particle accelerator?
Yeah, the accelerator.
It's somewhere in Europe where it's
Yo.
like Sweden, but I'm checking.
I watch cartoons, right? And I'm listening to the two of you go down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, these motherfuckers, I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. I ain't gonna lie.
Well, you know, I
And
mean,
this
it's
is
just
my show.
Apparently it's on the Franco-Swiss border near Geneva, and it's
Nice.
It's called the LHC Large Hadron Collider, which is
Let
just
me
a
ask-
particle.
Let me ask you this: if someone, we'll go around. If
yeah, they were
someone,
terrified of that.
let's start with you.
It
Let's
is.
start with you. Let's start with you, Chris. If someone was going to jump into you, and they had to change something, as your life is right now, like you did today, right?
Uh-huh.
And there was something they had to change about you. What do you think it would be?
Well, I'm actually going to answer that with a plausible suspicion that it may have happened.
Ooh.
Um, and I think it's possible that it happens to many people, and maybe it's not quantum leaping, but
Mhm.
it certainly could be possible as an explanation. You know, and I think you were aware of this, but back in 2018, I was, you know, heading down I wasn't, you know, I was looking at a heart attack.
Mhm.
I was really out of shape, had
Mhm.
gotten myself into some bad shit. And I don't know what it was, what happened to me, but I remember the day and the decision. I sat there on my deck out there. I had my usual, which was huge amounts of alcohol, and I took a picture of it and I said, I'm done.
Mhm.
And for 40 days and 40 nights, I didn't touch a drop. I stopped the bad eating. Well, of course, heavy drinking makes you eat badly at night. You know, that
Sure.
all stopped. 120 pounds in 4 months.
Mhm.
My numbers were perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So, what caused me after habitually, I mean, we're talking 15 years of drinking
Mhm.
heavily, not a cocktail a day. I was
Mhm.
putting away a case of beer every 2 days and a case of whiskey a week.
Mhm.
You know, so all of a sudden that went away. Like, and there was no withdrawal, there was no nothing, and I began to feel completely different. I'm like,
Mhm.
who am I? Like, who is this guy?
Right.
And
Right.
then
Right.
everything was great. And then I went back out on the road, and I started drinking again. Like,
Mm.
whoa, whoa.
Right.
Then
Right. Right.
then it became a shit show. And then you know, so and then it happened again just recently when I was in Florida. I know it's a really long answer. I was down helping mom out, and all of a sudden I couldn't function anymore. Like, I was weak, I was tired, I wasn't feeling good, and I stopped again. But I felt that it was an outside force, not like mystical or anything, but some sort of force that just it was so absolute
Mhm.
that it was a blink of an eye. So it's like almost when I hear that, like if somebody came in, and there's almost an aesthetic that I aspire to. You know,
Right.
I aspire for that aesthetic. Well, who's
Mhm.
doing that?
Right.
You know, I've always been me, but now all of a sudden at 55, I'm pushing for another aesthetic. That's interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
That's
anyway,
crazy.
that's what
That's insane.
That's it.
it's
Stacy's
possible.
like, I don't want to jump rope anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Stacy, what about?
What is it?
I don't want to jump rope anymore, so I just stopped jump roping.
But I'm just saying that, you know, I would look, and last thing on this point is, you know, I may have told you guys, and I don't mind saying this here publicly, but you know, I had a little bit of an addiction, you know,
Mhm.
with some party favors, and again, there was something that just happened,
Mhm.
and it was as if it was something else uh, making the decision. And I have always said, because my mother always says, she goes, "How do you do it? How do you just stop?" And I said, "It's as if my body is telling me,
Right.
you're done here." And there's no argument, there's no discussion. I feel separate from that. Like my frontal cortex feels separate and is watching what's happening.
Mhm.
So, you know, who knows?
Stace, what about you?
Um, I have a stupid short answer, kind of. So
I love that.
I don't know. I don't think I would know, at least not yet. Maybe it's going to be like way down the line if somebody had
Mhm.
come in, maybe having me move from Ionos to Haibu, like that one transition, maybe that's going to lead me down a path for something like
Right.
10 years from now. So
Right.
I don't know. But if I had a choice, I would have liked them to come back like 10 years ago and give me the balls to actually sing in front of people, because I'm really good at singing and I cannot sing in front of people because I just seize up. I can record it, I can
Right.
sing it. I just, once I get in front of people, it's just like I freeze.
Right. Right.
So I don't know why they can't just come back and do that. And then I could be a famous singer like Taylor Swift, but then I can give all my money to good causes. It'd be great.
Like
Church
Taylor
cancer.
Swift. God forbid.
But yeah, I
Uh,
don't think I would know yet. Maybe.
Right.
if it happened.
That's an honest answer, though. I mean, it's an honest answer. It's hard to judge yourself. It really is, because it's one of those things, because our egos get in the way. I think our idea of what we want versus what we have versus what we should get,
Mhm.
three different things. And that's, once it goes back to the conversation earlier about, AI saying, hey, we can't leave this conversation to you because you have too many X factors,
Yeah, there's too many variables, and
variables that you can't
maybe-
comprehend, that you can't
Exactly.
work out.
Yeah, but I don't think AI judges. I don't think it's a judge. I think
Right.
and
I don't think it
like,
does. I think it's analyzing the fact that there are
Right.
too many variables within like.
Where I think
Exactly.
I think it's like where an AI would X something off because it's not a variable,
Well-
quote unquote, we're still considering it for some reason.
yeah, well,
And I
think
think
of
that's
it
where the
that
problem
way.
is. Right.
Yeah.
Now-
I mean, and think of how scary that is. So
Yeah,
say
well, yeah.
you have ambitions. An individual has ambitions for something specific,
Mhm,
and they want to pursue that ambition. And it's their passion.
mhm.
And then it's up to AI to whether they'll actually ever get into the corral, whether they'll ever get into the playing field. And then they do
Right.
the AI non-judgmental, just pure analytics. Nope. Next.
Mhm.
So
But I-
so
There was
in
a
it,
good movie that was very similar to that. It was called Gattaca, and it had Uma
Yes.
Thurman and Ethan Hawke in it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it was determined from the day of birth based
Yeah.
on just your genetics alone.
Yep.
And your cognitive ability upon birth, what you will do later in life, no matter what. And I
Mhm.
actually really love the movie because have you guys both seen it? Because I don't want to give me like super
Mhm.
spoilers.
Yeah.
But he ends up getting what he wants at the end. Like he ends up being able to be so smart as to trick the system and take somebody's identity, and then he goes to space. His ultimate goal, which he was told he was not able to do. He even outswam his brother with his own, like while he had a heart condition,
Mhm.
to prove himself. And then he gets up there. But yeah, I think that's a horrifying thing. I hate the idea of people being
Mhm.
categorized based off of AI or whatever. Like if I was born, they're like, oh, well, she would just be a good laundry lady, but my
Right.
passion is singing or dancing or
Right,
acting
right.
or technology or building websites or curing cancer,
Mhm.
something like that. Yeah, it is scary to think that could just be taken away from you. Like,
I mean, like it's funny when
Yeah.
I listened to Chris and Chris, had a very like epiphany esque
mhm.
scenario happen to him. I don't want to say something similar because I don't want to bite off his coattails or anything like that. And I'm not trying to show up Stacy for her not so great line as she said. But like I think like for me, I was always a person that was very outgoing, very confident. Always had a lot of confidence, but I was very friendly. If I met you the first night, you're coming over, you're sleeping over, get some pajamas, have some dinner with me. You're my best friend now, type of thing. And that's good. And a lot of people said, "Oh, I like that guy. He's a nice guy." Blah blah blah. But like you, in reality, can't do that because you set yourself up for a lot of failure because your anticipation of whether or not said person feels the same way for you or whatever is not going to be necessarily the same thing. And I, as an adult, I'd say probably legit. I could probably say about 10 years ago, I kind of came to the epiphany to say, you know what? I really set myself up for letdowns. And I don't want to sit there and be let down and say, I'll use Chris as an example and say, oh, Chris let me down, and then be mad at Chris when technically I shouldn't be mad at Chris. Chris just didn't feel the same way I did about said thing or whatever. So therefore, that's on me, not on him. You understand what I'm saying? So I kind of came to that epiphany and I said, you know what? I have a little bit more self-worth than what I'm giving myself credit for. Never had a lack of my self-worth, but I wasn't giving myself credit for it. And therefore I said, you know what though? Now you people are going to have to earn it like normal people. And I'm going to have to let things evolve organically rather than forcing the issue. And if people want to be around, they'll be around. If they don't want to be around, they won't be around. And that's just what I have to accept. And that's it. And it was very hard for me to change that way. I don't want to compare it to Chris getting off addictions or dropping habits, and stuff like that. But in a mental capacity to sit there and say, I am driven almost robotically to sit there and say, I want to be this way, but I have to be this way.
Mhm.
In a sense. I thought that really, I did struggle with it. I did. I had to self evaluate myself, and I had to self counsel myself to sit there and say, Dan, don't be mad at this person, that person, because of you're setting this up. They're not. You know what I mean? It's not fair. I from that point, I don't use the word best friend because I think that's a connotation that puts too much pressure on the other person.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm Dan's best friend, but he's not my best friend. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And so I really had to force myself in a lot of ways to change my personality, not to the point of being a different person, but to the point of not putting myself in a position where I was going to have to deal with this again and again and again, whatever the case is. And then develop a dislike for people and develop a personality that now I wanted to fight that. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, I wanted to still be pleasant, but now be realistic in a sense. So, is it something that I could sit there and say, it almost feels like someone could have jumped in me and said, hey, if we could stop Dan from flirting with that girl or hanging out with that dude or whatever, or whatever, maybe we can make him better. And then he could teach some, like Stacy's saying, I'll teach somebody else that maybe does need to know that lesson. Maybe I don't necessarily need that lesson. It's like, oh, good for you, Dan, whatever. But maybe somebody else really needs that lesson and needs to see it in reality to say, hey, you know what? I watched Dan and I really need to do that because I was going to kill somebody or I was going to, harm myself or whatever the case is.
Right.
So, it's weird.
Yeah, maybe that's just our way of, and who's to say that if that was a reality and then those decisions happened with a lot of clarity,
Mm-hmm.
that next leap was from you to that other person that was inspired or changed, that their life changed because of their interaction with you.
Right.
That's what I mean by this kind of continuous kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that can be, if I were to believe that that's actually happening and has been happening, then I'm probably flirting with conspiracy theories and saying, somewhere, they've been doing this, elsewhere. I don't know. But it maybe even just not literally, but
Mm-hmm.
figuratively, maybe that is what's happening to us, a form of quantum leap. Like when you inspire someone, when you say a sentence to someone that changes the way they were thinking about something for a very long time, and it was completely, innocent, just you just said something, it snapped in their mind,
Yeah.
like, oh wow, you know what, I should think of Let me think of something about that, so that may have a part of it. I mean, it's
There's
all energy, right? Energy is
Oh, it
neither
is.
Yes.
destroyed or created. It's just transferred.
Mhm.
Right.
There
Correct.
was a movie I watched that was actually based on a theory that I cannot remember what the name of it was called, but the movie was called The Empty Man. But essentially, the whole basis is it's based off of this theory that we are receiving innate signals from elsewhere, does not matter, other world, space, nature, does not matter. We receive signals, which is why birds inherently know how to go south. That's the reason when even if you have like a human, right, and they're born on a secluded island by themselves, and then they meet another man, they would know instinctually to have sex, to procreate, how to have a baby, and to feed it with their breasts, like it, just like other animals do.
Mhm.
So there's a theory that there are signals that we receive elsewhere, almost like a Wi-Fi signal,
Mhm.
that we receive to kind of give us not commands, but like instinctual guidance. I can't fucking talk.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the damn theory was called. It was like the 999 theory or some shit.
Mhm.
I can't remember. Oh, puppy. But yeah, I mean,
But
like it's a really cool concept, but
Mhm.
and it does make sense. In fact, because that's one of the things I always wondered about is,
Right.
for example, when we're born, how do we know to eat? How do we know to cry when we're uncomfortable?
Right.
How do we know? And then there's, just the, genetic memory, which is what science
Sure.
goes with. But then there's the other part of science and philosophy that talks about that receiving a signal thing.
Right.
Which also allows like, birds to do their perfect, flying duck shit and stuff like that. But I can't remember what the freaking
Yeah.
concept was called. It's gonna drive me nuts. But there is a theory out there about that we are being not controlled, but influenced
Mm.
by something
Influenced.
outside of what we can see. It's sort of like if you look at a TV screen, right? And you ask what part of the TV screen is the signal coming from, you can point to any fucking pixel on there, right?
Right.
But that's not where the signal's coming from. It's coming from
Well,
somewhere else, and all we can see is the big picture.
I'm gonna go back to another episode of Bite Me, right? That we did a couple years ago, and Chris made the explanation that he thinks that we are an experiment that was now left here, right?
Yeah, no, that's
you remember what I'm talking
no,
about?
I believe we were intentional. That
Yeah.
our what we are as
Yeah.
a species was completely intentional.
Yeah.
Kind of like a
But we were-
Prometheus thing.
but we
I
were-
don't know if you've seen that movie. But.
We were abandoned. In other
We
words,
were abandoned.
they
He said
got
that.
what they needed out of us and they left.
That's what
But-
we do. We do
but that-
experimental shit
but
all
that-
the
Well,
time.
and that's
And
why
then we leave, yeah.
that's why I feel that way,
Mhm.
because we're really good at it.
But imagine if the quantum leap, right, that we're talking about, right? Imagine is like it's not any different than an avatar in a
Right.
game or something like that, where maybe like they have us all here. We're all these little avatars like Sims,
Oh,
right? We're like a galactic Sims, right?
Mhm.
And these people can take control of any one of us at any given time and do something so that we don't sit there and walk into the corner the whole time and then starve or
So
whatever the, you know what I mean, or whatever the case is.
so
So
funny.
think about that for a second.
There's a whole theory about like how, in the general funny term is using the term matrix, but
Yeah.
that we are. But the official term is the simulation theory.
Mhm.
Is that we are all in a simulation. All right. We're being very similar to what you see in the Matrix. Like we're all unconscious. We all have this, and this. But then if they really wanted to, they would have the ability to come in and control us if they wanted to.
Yes.
But they were actually doing some sort of weird scientific experiment. And they said the chances of us actually being in the original reality and not in a simulation are actually really low, which blows my mind. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? I didn't look into the information
Right.
that deep, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool, interesting theories out there that, yeah, that philosophy is, and even science, like a lot of these are scientific theories.
Yeah, I remember that one. And they actually were trying to pinpoint when it started, but they, that there's a good probability. My only issue with that as a probability is it seems very, I guess maybe, I don't know, it seems very odd to me, because it would seem that you would, if there was, if it was a simulation, there would be other things that could happen. We're still tied to the laws of the physics of this world.
Mhm.
We're tied to it. Now, whether we're tied to it because it's programmed in and
Yeah, I was
we
gonna say it
can't
might be
break
just
it,
because it's programmed.
or,
Right.
but at the end of the day, it's still like that stuff, all that stuff that happened 500 years ago is still happening today. And, people are horrible to each other. They, the wars, the dropping of bombs, all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, who's this entertaining?
What if we
Who's
all
this
chose
for?
in? What if we all chose to be in reality? What if, like, and this is something I've always thought, what if, in terms of simulation, we were in a reality so fucking shitty in a post-apocalyptic area, so fucking crappy that
Right.
like we opted to like forget that, like we volunteered, signed up to forget that and be in here. So I mean, we wouldn't remember that if we were in the simulation. Be like,
Not
yeah,
unlike Total Recall.
yeah, not unlike Total Recall, or they just did a
Mhm.
movie that kind of reminded me of. It was like Total Recall meets Stepford Wives. It was
Yeah.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Mhm.
But that's what it was. Like a lot of people were in there against their will, but they lost all their memory of the previous place. But there was people who voluntarily, many people who were voluntarily in this area.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. So we could have all chosen this. Maybe we live in a world where, like in the Matrix, I love when they're trying to ask dude if he wants to go back in the Matrix. He's like, yeah, I don't care if this steak tastes like a fucking steak
Yeah.
and it doesn't taste like the grind up shit. I don't care. And I know it sounds really shitty, but I'm like that too. I'm like, listen, as long as I'm getting nutrition, you're taking care of me, and I don't have to deal with this shitty reality, fine, put me in there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's, why I think that it's kind of, and I do keep falling back to my initial thoughts on this, is that
Yeah.
we are, and I think a lot of it is why we suffer. And
Mhm.
this is just my thoughts. This is simply an opinion, because the whole idea, the thought process behind the abandoned species that was genetically engineered to do a particular job, which is us. Leave that aside for a minute, and here we are, millennia later, doing our thing, and we suffer, because we haven't maybe perhaps accepted what we are. Knowing who you are is one thing, but accepting what you are is probably the most horrific. Okay, for instance, people are like, and I hear it all the time, because first of all, I'm a carnivore.
Mhm.
All I eat is flesh. Right now, I don't go around telling people that, like, oh, I'm
Listen,
eating
I'm the
steak
same
every day.
way.
Right, but the thing is that the idea is that the fighting amongst, and even a lot of religious sects is the same thing. Is like, these are the rules, but at the same time, it's like, no, we're a human species, and we're here.
Mhm.
And if you, it horrifies me to even talk about it. That's why I don't talk about it much, because I do have a feeling of some sort of higher spiritual thing, but I can't explain what that is personally. But
Right.
at the same time, I'm like, do you want, if we, when you think of like a lion, right? A lion on the Sahara, and it's like, I got to eat now. It doesn't question itself. It doesn't have any moral code, zero moral
Right.
code. It is built to do two things, sorry. Eat
And fuck.
gazelle and zebra and make baby lions. That's
Well,
it.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the job. That's the gig. I know it, and he and she knows what that is.
See, and why
The
you say that's
thing with
horrifying is it's also not quite that horrifying, because you know how much of a release that would be, and also how simple life would be if you're not worrying about life and existence, and you just know that I'm hungry, I'm going to eat this. Oh, I need to
Right.
procreate. I need to have a baby. Sorry, that's all.
But the thing is that we have those things. We have those things those lions don't have. First of all,
Right.
we're extremely we're self-aware.
Yes.
We have free will, and we are an expanding creative creature. Like we're, I mean, look at everything around us. This is why I stand by this argument that we're not of this earth. Two reasons. Number one, you're telling me a T-Rex couldn't invent an engine, and it was around for 60, for millions of years, and it didn't think, hey, where's my opposing thumb?
Yeah, I was like,
all those
opposable
millions of
thumb.
Yeah, but it probably couldn't
Millions of
see
years,
its
right?
thumbs because his arms are only this big.
Right. Well, I'd
Yeah,
say
why are you picking on
it could have been,
T-Rex?
could have been any T-Rex. It could have been any dinosaur. But here's my point: is that all of a sudden, the Homo sapien arrives, and you got fire. A little ways down the road, you got the wheel. Then you got a combustible engine. And here's number two reason why I don't feel that we're of this earth is because we're not suited for this earth. I say to everyone that I've ever met in this discussion, I've said, everyone, strip off all of your clothes, walk out your front door, and see how long you'll survive.
Yeah.
With the elements, with finding food, with all of those things. Like Naked and Afraid is trying to prove a point, that show. They
Yeah.
try to prove a point. And even some of the successful ones in the real world, they probably wouldn't have survived. You would take, if you had 500 people do that, by the end of it in a year, you would have 50. The rest of them would die because we're
Yeah.
not built for this planet.
Not
We're
just that, but and I know this is going a little off topic, as I usually do.
Yeah, I forgot
I have
what we're talking
ADD.
about.
Okay, I'm sorry. But like with Atlantis,
Yes.
like for years, I mean, even the theories now are still going on. There's this like lost city of Atlantis. Nobody knows about it. The only thing that everyone agrees on, including the philosophers and people who first wrote about it was an extremely super fucking advanced civilization.
Mhm.
Now, I believe that what you're saying is definitely plausible in that sense, because first of all, how would you achieve that technology so quickly where we're not even at that point yet again? And
Right.
secondly, like, who's to say, and we probably had a ton of advanced civilizations even prior to that. Who knows? Where
Oh,
we
yeah,
all
I believe
fucked
it.
ourselves up
Well,
and blew our shit
I'm
up
gonna-
because we're doing the
Well,
same thing
that's
now.
a reset thing.
I
Yeah,
want to
that's-
challenge, as a stand-up comic, I'm going to challenge you on this. If we know so much about the lost city of Atlantis, that they're so advanced and this and that, then if we know so much, how the fuck can't we find it? If we know so much about it.
Because they destroyed
Right.
themselves. Like, imagine if they had something more powerful or akin to
I
like
know California exists, but I've never been there, so I can't tell you not one fucking thing about California, other than what somebody told me.
yeah,
that's
it's
been
just a bunch of people who just have these like weird. It's sort of like
there. I'm saying,
I know, no, you have a good point, but like the way I see it is, I'm assuming that they had something just as advanced as, or more advanced than what we have in terms of like the atomic bomb or the hydrogen bomb. Because if you drop a hydrogen bomb or any of the bombs we have now, like our power's gotten far more superior since the bomb we dropped in
Oh, sure.
Hiroshima, right? So
Sure.
let's say if you have a civilization in a certain area, they're super advanced, but they're only in this small area, right?
Right.
And there's like a civil war, and then people just
Mhm.
fucking blow themselves up using those nukes.
Right,
There might not
right.
be anything left. Like, what is there to find? What if there's nothing because they fucking decimated everything?
Why? I
Yeah.
think from this, and we're going to end this up now because we've been on for just about an hour.
Every time, I'm sorry.
No. I love these. I love these rabbit holes. That's why I love Chris and you and on this show, and I love this show. I think we are up in the air whether or not the theory of quantum leap is good or bad. I think there's it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
I think there's a lot of morality that is not in play, that should be in play, perhaps, at least as far as what the show provides us, versus what would really happen if we had this thing in here. I still think, I don't know how Chris liking Florida Georgia line would change anything in the future history. I don't know. Not a fucking thing. He said.
Chris is starting to take this personally.
Chris, like, I do not
No,
like
you know what,
that
though?
fucking band.
Let me put a tag on that, though. I
Yes,
think with
please.
all technology, there's always going to be the good and the bad. For instance, it's great that I can get in my car and drive to Florida and just know exactly how I'm going to get there without having to do all this stuff. However, having said that,
Yes.
I also find that sometimes this technology becomes so over connected to an individual that
Yes.
they can't read a fucking street sign.
Yeah.
Like they're driving down 95 going, I'm lost. I'm like, we're going south.
Well,
It says south.
We're
South.
in it. We're in
Like,
a.
I'm talking about the intuitive idea to be able to function. You know?
But
Oh yeah, I
understand
think
though, but
technology
understand-
is making a lot of that obsolete. In terms
we
of
are in a
making-
generation now where the younger generation does not know how to read an analog clock, and they
No,
cannot
they don't.
read cursive.
Wait! I need you to back that the fuck up. So I knew about the cursive; they were phasing it out, and then I heard they're
Yeah, they
bringing it back.
But they
and-
can't. The kids cannot read an analog clock.
I do not. What? It's
It's a clock. I know. I understand.
There's fucking.
But they can't
hands
read
and
it. They
clicks,
can't
and then
read
you
a
got
clock.
numbers.
And I'll tell you
Wow.
right now, somebody said to me, they said, Dan, what time is it? I said, it's 10 to 6. He said, what the fuck does that mean? I said, what do you mean? It's 10 to 6.
It's 10 minutes until it hits 6 p.m.
Yeah. And I explained it like that. And he said, well, why the fuck didn't you just say that? I said, I did say that.
I was
Because
going to check.
he said, your old man talk is falling on deaf ears over here.
I think
The kid
that
was in
is
his,
more
and his
of a
kid,
regional
this kid was in his
thing.
mid 20s, by the way. He
Because
was
when
in
I
his
lived
mid
in
20s.
Ohio, it was like 1999 or whatever. We always said 15 till, like we'll be like 15 till 6. But when I moved to Pennsylvania, it
It's
was
quarter of.
15 of 6 or quarter,
Yeah.
not till, it's of. But I knew it immediately. Like when you said of or till, like I instinctually knew that's what you fucking meant. Like I didn't need somebody to explain that to me.
Well, I think to Chris's point is that we're slowly but surely not having to think. So therefore the muscle is growing weak.
I
And
agree with that.
Our
That's
brain
what's-
is
that's
becoming
what's scares me.
flabby. Yeah. Our
I mean,
brains are becoming flabby.
but the irony in that is that the information is there. I mean, in other words, isn't anything that the three of us couldn't spitball
And-
right now, just bring right up out of the blue. And there isn't any of us who wouldn't be able to at least inform ourselves.
And let's
and
feed
each other with, you know what I mean?
let's feed Chris's conspiracy theory with a flabby brain, and we're not having the ability to think on our feet like that. How easy is it for us to be submissive and just
And then
go
that's why
along with the flow?
Actually,
Now
that'll
they're-
probably be more beneficial if the signal theory is true. That
Yeah.
might be more beneficial. Actually, Dave and I were talking about like if there was an apocalypse, right? I come from my parents are Gen X, right?
Yeah, they're my
Correct.
generation.
That's
Yeah,
what I
I'm
Genetics.
Yeah.
my parents had me very early. So I was born in the mid to early 80s. So
Mhm.
I'm millennial, but I'm on the fucking way ass end of that.
yeah.
So like I had to read atlases. I had to do all that other shit. I have to, read a clock apparently that nobody else knows how to do.
Nobody knows how to read a clock. No.
But like if we ever come to a situation where technology is that you blow off an EMP and everything's fucking down, I told Dave I was never so happy to have been raised in a redneck family because I know how to hunt, I know how to fish, I know how to shoot a gun, I know how to shoot a bow and arrow. And just because I'm a weird person, and my mom my mom and grandma was what I call a kitchen witch. They knew about herbs and shit, like stuff that fixed stuff. So I'm like, I'd be okay, but you know how lost that is to people.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, once again, I'm going to lead you down a rabbit hole. And we're going to leave this show at this
Oh
point
shit!
here.
I'm sorry. We keep wanting to end it.
I was watching. Yeah, shut the fuck up, Stacey. No, I'm just kidding. There was a video out there, and you could probably find it, where a guy gets on some sort of a military base, right? And in the parking lot of the military base, there's about a good 60 cars, right? And they're all models from the 60s, right? They're official cars, but they're all models from the 60s. The theory behind it is not one of them has a computer in them.
Mhm.
So as
Right.
far as if an EMP goes, they have mobile transportation.
That
Yeah.
is true. That is a
Think
good
about that for a
idea.
second.
Mhm.
Our government, I'm sure all governments, I say our government because we only talk about ours, but the governments know. And they have these conspiracy theories, and they're like, we're going to plan for all this. I guarantee you, for anything that sounds crazy out there, there's a plan for it. I
Yeah, good luck
guarantee
to
that.
them. I'm a pedestrian trying to take my non-existent car.
Well, let me tell you something. This was a fun thing. We're going to do some more bite meets coming up soon. I'm glad we got the show back here. I'm glad we're down these rabbit holes now. Chris is gonna call me like tomorrow, and we're gonna have another hour discussion on the phone about all this. This is what
Bitch,
happens.
if you guys call each other and have a discussion about this shit
We
without
do.
me, I will
Yo,
cry.
yo, let me tell you something. We have discussions that should be recorded and they're never recorded, me and Chris, because Chris will get started and I'm like, yeah. And then how about this? And he's like, yeah, right. And he
Listen,
gets
I
me
do it all
started,
the
I get
time.
him started.
I was saying, me
Those-
and my
those are
husband
when-
do it all the time. We're like, yo, but what about this? And then we'll just go into all these theories, and then we'll start fucking Googling and then talking.
And you know what the funny
theorizing
thing is?
and sciencing and
Chris and I will go out drinking, right? And we won't have 3 words to fucking say to each other. We're drinking.
yeah,
Yes, because I'm drinking.
Because we're
Because
drinking. I can't
Listen,
be I can't be involved in this
if I'm
talking right now.
drinking, I get. So you think I'm bad now? I only took 2 shots, which didn't do anything except for make me a little sweaty. But when
Yeah.
I get drinking, you think I talk bad now with my ADD? I will go into philosophy and scientific theories. And my big thing, for some reason, I love to talk about fucking bugs because that's like my area of expertise. I know insects,
go.
bugs, biology. That's what I do. That's what I went to school for. But I will fucking not shut up.
Well, let me tell you something. Shut up now. Because I'm trying to end the show.
Yes! Oh, you gotta shut me
I
up.
got you again.
Shut me the fuck up.
Stacy is a welcome member here on Bite Me. She's also joining the crew of Capes Not Included. So we got some Capes Not Included shows coming up soon. We were going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. One show was going to be for the females. What if you were dating a Hulk? Could you take that? It was a totally like off the wall subject, but we're going to be talking about that
We
on
need to
Capes Not
discuss
Included.
that because it's not just a yes or no answer. There's a
Right,
thing. All right,
right.
we gotta talk.
And then and then of course Chris Gordon's on a bunch of shows here. He's on Bite Me. He's on tonight's TV lineup. He's on DJs After Dark. He's on Unsung Heroes with Chris Gordon. Chris has a ton of shows on his own YouTube as well, which are great watches. He does a lot of great interviews. So obviously check out Chris Gordon whenever you can. Look him up on YouTube. Look him up here on the channel
Thank
as
you.
well. Absolutely. And of course, as a musician, just go see him. He's phenomenal. And then we have plenty of shows here on the DJB Productions Network. Hit the subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell, leave us some comments. Tell us what you think would be changed if someone quantum leaped into you. I would love to hear some of these things down there. Keep it clean if you could, please. Until next time, for Chris Gordon, for Stacy Rubel, my name is Danny J. It is Bite Me right here on the DJB Productions Network.
All right.